A 7-year-old boy stood alone at a gas station, his clothes dirty and his eyes hollow. When a weathered biker stopped for fuel, the child fixated on a faded military tattoo on the man's forearm, a symbol from a war fought decades ago. The boy whispered 5 words that shattered the biker's composure. "My grandpa had that too." What followed was a promise made in blood and fire. A convoy of 70 riders and a truth buried so deep that powerful men had spent years keeping it hidden. Some debts can never be erased. Some promises survive beyond death itself. Chapter 1. The Boy at the Pump. The desert sun pressed down on the asphalt like a hammer on an anvil. Route 49 stretched endlessly in both directions. A ribbon of heat shimmer and cracked pavement cutting through southern Arizona. The gas station sat like a forgotten relic, peeling paint, rusted signs, and a single pump that wheezed with each gallon delivered. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Marcus "Hawk" Sullivan pulled his Harley alongside the pump, killing the engine. The sudden silence felt oppressive. He was 53, built like a man who'd spent his youth breaking things and his middle age trying to fix them. His leather vest bore patches from places most people only saw on maps: Kandahar, Fallujah, places where sand got into everything and never truly left. He noticed the boy immediately. The kid stood near the station entrance, maybe 7 years old, wearing clothes that had seen too many days without washing. His sneakers were held together with duct tape. His hair hung in his eyes. But it was his stillness that caught Hawk's attention. The way he stood perfectly motionless, watching. Hawk began fueling, keeping the boy in his peripheral vision. The kid hadn't moved, hadn't asked for money or food. Just watched with eyes that seemed far older than his face. The pump clicked off. Hawk replaced the nozzle and turned toward the store. The boy stepped forward. "Excuse me, mister." Hawk stopped. The voice was small but steady. "Yeah, kid." The boy pointed at Hawk's right forearm, where a tattoo of an eagle clutching a rifle sat beneath faded script. 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines. Ramadi, 2004. "My grandpa had that too." Hawk's chest tightened. He crouched down slowly, bringing himself to eye level with the boy. Up close, he could see the dirt on the kid's face, the way his ribs showed through his thin shirt. "What's your name, son?" "Ethan Cole." "Where's your grandpa now, Ethan?" The boy's eyes dropped to the pavement. "He died 3 years ago, but he had that same tattoo, same eagle, same words." Hawk's mind raced. The 2nd Battalion had lost good men in Ramadi, brothers who never made it home, brothers whose names he still whispered when the nights got too quiet. "What was your grandpa's name?" "James Cole. Everyone called him Jimmy." The world stopped spinning. Jimmy Cole, Corporal James Cole. The kid who'd saved Hawk's life when an IED tore through their convoy. The kid who'd taken shrapnel meant for someone else. The kid who'd made Hawk promise, "If anything happens to me, you look after my family. You make sure they're okay." 21 years later, that promise had found him at a desert gas station. "Where's your mom and dad, Ethan?" The boy's jaw tightened. "Mom's gone. Dad's inside. He's not good." Through the station window, Hawk could see a man slumped against the counter arguing with the clerk. Even from 30 feet away, the body language told the story. Addict, desperate, unreliable. "You hungry?" Ethan nodded quickly. Hawk stood and pulled out his phone. His fingers moved across the screen with practiced efficiency. He pulled up a contact list that read like a memorial wall. Bull, Reaper, Shotgun Ghost. Men who'd ridden with him for decades. Men who understood what brotherhood meant. He typed quickly, "Need the crew, Route 49, mile marker 87. Now, this one matters." Within 30 seconds, responses flooded in. "On my way. Bull 20 minutes out. Reaper rolling." Ghost Hawk put his hand on Ethan's shoulder. "I'm going to buy you some food. Then we're going to have a talk with your dad." And then, kid, we're going to make sure you're safe. That's a promise." Ethan looked up at him with eyes that had seen too much disappointment to believe in promises. But something in Hawk's face, the weathered lines, the scars, the absolute certainty, made him nod. Inside the station, Ethan's father finally noticed his son outside. He stumbled toward the door, and Hawk could smell the cheap whiskey from 10 feet away. "Who the hell are you?" Hawk didn't answer. He just looked at the man, really looked, and saw what Jimmy Cole's daughter must have seen before she left. Weakness, selfishness, the kind of poison that destroyed families from the inside out. "We need to talk," Hawk said quietly, "about your son, about what happens next." The man laughed bitterly. "You don't know anything about—" The rumble of approaching motorcycles cut him off. Chapter 2. The Iron Promise. The sound started as a distant thunder, growing steadily until it shook the windows of the gas station. 7 motorcycles rolled into the lot in formation, their riders dismounting with military precision. These weren't weekend warriors or costume bikers. These were men who'd seen combat, who'd lost brothers, who understood that some promises were written in blood. Bull stepped forward first, 6'4", 250 pounds of muscle and scar tissue. His vest bore the same 2nd Battalion patch as Hawk's. Behind him came Reaper, Ghost, Shotgun, and 3 others whose road names matched their reputations. Ethan's father sobered up quickly. He backed against the station wall, his bravado evaporating. What is this?" Hawk kept his voice level. "This is what happens when a good man dies protecting his brothers, and those brothers find out his family needs help." Bull moved to stand beside Hawk, arms crossed. Jimmy Cole saved Hawk's life in Ramadi, made him promise to look after his family if anything happened. Hawk doesn't break promises. The father's eyes darted between the bikers. "I'm taking care of my kid. We're fine." "No." Ethan's voice was small but clear. "We're not fine." Everyone turned to look at the boy. He stood straighter now, as if the presence of these men had given him permission to tell the truth. "We haven't had food in 2 days. The power's been off for a week. Dad sells everything for—" He trailed off, but everyone understood. The father lunged forward. "You little—" Bull caught him by the throat and lifted him 6 inches off the ground. The man's feet kicked uselessly. Bull held him there for 5 seconds, long enough to make the point, then dropped him. "You're done," Bull said flatly. "Child services will be here within the hour. You can cooperate, or we can make this difficult. Your choice." Hawk crouched beside Ethan again. "Your grandpa told me about your grandma once, said she lived up in Flagstaff. That's still true?" Ethan nodded. "Grandma Sarah. But Dad won't let me see her. He says she's trying to steal me." Hawk's jaw tightened. He pulled out his phone again and dialed a number he'd kept for emergencies. The voice that answered belonged to someone who owed him a significant favor. A state senator who'd once been a captain in the Marines. "Senator Morrison, it's Marcus Sullivan. I need help with a situation." The conversation lasted 3 minutes. When Hawk hung up, he turned to the group. "Sarah Cole will have emergency custody by tonight. Social Services is expediting the case. The father here gets 1 chance to enter rehab voluntarily, or he faces neglect charges." The man slumped against the wall, defeated. "Fine, whatever, just let me say goodbye." Hawk shook his head. "You lost that right when you chose the bottle over your son." Ghost moved forward with a duffel bag. Inside were sandwiches, water bottles, clean clothes, and a phone. He knelt beside Ethan and opened it. "Your grandma's going to meet us at the county office. Until then, you're with us. You're safe now." Ethan looked at the food like he couldn't believe it was real. He picked up a sandwich with trembling hands and took a bite. Tears started rolling down his cheeks, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of finally being seen, of finally mattering. Hawk stood and addressed his crew. "We ride escort to Flagstaff. The boy doesn't leave our sight until he's with his grandmother." The bikers nodded in unison. As they prepared to leave, Ethan tugged on Hawk's vest. "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." Hawk looked down at the boy, at Jimmy Cole's grandson, and felt the weight of 21 years settle on his shoulders. "Your grandpa saved my life, made me promise to look after his family. A promise made to a dying brother isn't just words, kid. It's iron. It doesn't bend. It doesn't break. And it damn sure doesn't fade with time." He lifted Ethan onto the back of his Harley and secured a helmet on the boy's head. The other bikers mounted up, engines roaring to life. We're halfway through this incredible journey. If you're watching from anywhere in the world right now, drop a comment and let us know where you're from. Your support means everything. Chapter 3. The road to Flagstaff. The convoy moved north on Highway 89, 7 motorcycles surrounding Hawk's bike like a protective formation. Ethan sat behind him, small hands gripping the leather vest, feeling the rumble of the engine through his entire body. For the first time in years, he felt safe. The desert landscape rolled past, red rocks jutting toward cloudless sky. Saguaro cacti standing like sentinels, the endless expanse of the American Southwest. Hawk kept his speed steady, one eye on the road and one on the mirrors. Old habits from convoy duty never died. Bull pulled alongside them at a stoplight, giving Ethan a thumbs up. The boy smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his face. They stopped at a rest area 30 miles north of the gas station. The bikers formed a perimeter while Ghost distributed water and snacks. Ethan sat on a picnic table, watching these men move with coordinated purpose. "They're like soldiers," he said to Hawk. "We were soldiers. Most of us still are, in the ways that matter." Reaper approached with a tablet. "Got confirmation from the county. Sarah Cole is en route to the Family Services office. She'll be there in 90 minutes. Hawk nodded. "We'll beat her there by 30. I want time to brief the caseworker." As they prepared to mount up again, an Arizona Highway Patrol cruiser pulled into the rest area. The officer stepped out, hand resting casually on his service weapon as he approached the group. "Gentlemen, that's quite a convoy you've got there." Hawk stepped forward, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. "Just giving a kid a ride to his grandmother, officer. All legal, all documented." The officer studied Hawk's face, then looked at Ethan. The boy met his gaze steadily, no longer afraid. The officer's expression softened. "I got a call about a situation at a gas station down south. Neglect case. This related?" "Yes, sir. We're transporting him to Family Services in Flagstaff. His grandmother has emergency custody pending." The officer nodded slowly. "Senator Morrison's office called ahead. Said to expect you." He looked at the assembled bikers, taking in their patches, their bearing, their unmistakable brotherhood. "You boys take care of that kid." "That's the plan." The officer tipped his hat and returned to his cruiser. As he pulled away, Bull muttered, "Morrison works fast." "He owes me 3 lives from Fallujah," Hawk replied. "He knows it." They rolled into Flagstaff as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. The mountains in the distance glowed orange and purple. The air had cooled 20 degrees since they'd left the desert. The Family Services building was a low brick structure on the north side of town. Hawk parked in front, the other bikes fanning out behind him. He lifted Ethan down carefully. "Your grandma's going to be here soon. You ready?" Ethan looked up at him. "Will you stay until she comes?" "Wouldn't leave before that, promise." Inside, a caseworker named Jennifer Martinez met them. She was in her 40s, with kind eyes and the tired look of someone who'd seen too many bad situations. But when she saw Ethan, really saw him, the way Hawk had, her professionalism cracked slightly. "Oh, sweetheart, let's get you cleaned up and fed while we wait for your grandmother." She led Ethan to a back room. Hawk and Bull remained in the lobby, standing like sentinels. The other bikers waited outside, engines off but ready, 20 minutes later, the door burst open, and a woman in her late 60s rushed in. Sarah Cole had her son's eyes and her grandson's determined jaw. She looked around frantically until she spotted the caseworker, bringing Ethan back out. "Ethan!" The boy ran to her, and she swept him up, holding him like she'd never let go. Both were crying. Sarah kept repeating, "I've got you, you're safe now." Hawk watched from across the room, feeling something tight in his chest finally loosen. Sarah Cole looked up and saw him. She gently set Ethan down and approached, her eyes taking in his patches, his bearing, the way he stood. Understanding dawned on her face. "You knew Jimmy." "Yes, ma'am. He saved my life in Iraq, made me promise to look after his family." Her hand flew to her mouth. "You're Marcus. He wrote about you. He said if anything ever happened, you'd come. I'm sorry it took so long to find you." She shook her head fiercely. "You found my grandson when he needed you most. That's what matters." She gripped his hand. Thank you for keeping your promise." Hawk's voice was rough. "Jimmy died keeping his. This is the least I could do." We're in Flagstaff, Arizona right now, and this story is far from over. Stay with us. Chapter 4. The Buried Truth. Sarah Cole signed the emergency custody papers while Ethan sat beside her, refusing to let go of her hand. The caseworker explained the next steps: temporary custody hearing within 72 hours, evaluation of Ethan's father's fitness, long-term placement decisions. But as they talked, Hawk noticed something. Sarah kept glancing at him, then away, as if wrestling with a decision. Finally, she stood and approached him. "Can we talk? Privately?" They stepped outside, where Bull and the others waited. Sarah took a deep breath. "There's something you need to know about Jimmy's death. Something I've kept quiet for 3 years because I was afraid. But now, with Ethan safe..." She paused, gathering courage. "Jimmy didn't die from his war injuries. Not exactly." Hawk went very still. "Ma'am?" "He died from complications related to them, yes. But the VA hospital refused treatment for 6 months. They kept denying his claims, saying his injuries weren't service-connected, even though he had documentation. By the time they finally approved care, it was too late." Bull moved closer, his expression darkening. "They let him die?" "There were 3 other veterans from his unit who went through the same thing. All died within a year of each other, all denied treatment, all with the same caseworker processing their claims, a man named Gerald Hackett." Hawk pulled out his phone. "You have proof of this?" "Jimmy kept everything: files, denied claims, correspondence. I have boxes of it at my house. I tried going to the media, but they said without a lawyer, nothing would come of it. And I couldn't afford..." "You have it now," Hawk said quietly. He turned to Bull. "Get Morrison on the phone and call Jake Cordero." Bull raised an eyebrow. "The attorney? The Marine Corps attorney who went after that contracting fraud ring. He owes me." Within an hour, they were at Sarah's small house on the outskirts of Flagstaff. She led them to a spare bedroom where 4 boxes sat stacked against the wall. Inside were meticulously organized files, claim denials, medical records, correspondence between Jimmy and the VA. Hawk photographed everything while Bull coordinated calls. Reaper had pulled up Gerald Hackett's employment history on his laptop. He's still working at the Phoenix VA office, 15 years on the job, and look at this. Complaints filed against him by 17 veterans or their families over the past decade, all dismissed as procedural errors. Ghost whistled low. 17. "How many died?" Hawk asked, his voice deadly calm. Reaper typed rapidly. "At least 6, maybe more if you count suicides related to denied claims." The room fell silent. Bull ended a call and turned to the group. "Morrison's bringing the Inspector General's office into this. Cordero's flying in from San Diego tomorrow morning. He wants copies of everything." Hawk looked at Sarah. "You said you were afraid. Afraid of what?" She hesitated. After Jimmy died, I started getting calls, anonymous, telling me to stop asking questions, that my daughter and grandson could end up in unfortunate situations if I kept pushing. Then my daughter disappeared 6 months later. Disappeared! She struggled with addiction after Jimmy died, but she was trying to get clean. She was in rehab, doing well. Then one day she just left. No one's seen her since. The police said she relapsed and ran off, but Sarah's voice broke. She would never abandon Ethan. Never. Hawk exchanged glances with Bull. This was bigger than they'd thought. "We need to find her," Ethan's small voice came from the doorway. No one had heard him approach. He stood in his pajamas, looking small and vulnerable but determined. "Mom's not bad. She just got sad after Grandpa died. But she wouldn't leave me. Someone took her." Sarah started to object, to shield him from the harsh truth, but Hawk held up a hand. "You're right, Ethan, and we're going to find her." He turned to his crew. "This stopped being a simple custody case. This is a cover-up, and it's still active. We need to move carefully." Shotgun, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. "I know a guy in Phoenix PD, veteran, good cop. He can pull the missing persons file without raising flags." "Do it. Reaper, I want everything you can find on Hackett, financials, property records, connections. Bull, get Morrison to put protection on Sarah and Ethan until we know what we're dealing with." The men dispersed to their tasks. Hawk knelt beside Ethan. "This might take time, and it might get complicated, but we don't leave Marines behind. Not the living, not the dead, and not their families." Ethan nodded solemnly. "Grandpa said Marines keep their promises. Always." Chapter 5. The Phantom Network. Jake Cordero arrived in Flagstaff at dawn, carrying a briefcase and the demeanor of someone who'd prosecuted war criminals. He was 48, lean and sharp-eyed, with the kind of intensity that made courtrooms nervous. He spent 4 hours reviewing Sarah's documents, while Hawk's crew ran their own investigations. By noon, they reconvened at a rented conference room in a hotel near Sarah's house. Cordero laid out his findings with military precision. Gerald Hackett is the center of a systematic denial scheme that's been running for at least a decade. He targets veterans with complex injuries requiring expensive long-term care. He denies their initial claims, then buries any appeals in bureaucratic delays until they either give up or die. The VA saves millions in treatment costs. "Oi, who benefits?" Bull asked. "Follow the money. Hackett's been getting performance bonuses based on claim denial rates. His supervisor, Douglas Kramer, has been promoted 3 times during this period, and the Phoenix VA office has received federal efficiency awards for cost management." Hawk's fists clenched. "They're getting rewarded for killing veterans." "Effectively, yes, but proving criminal intent is difficult. They hide behind procedural compliance and claim they're just following policy." Reaper looked up from his laptop. "Found something. Hackett owns property in Sedona. Expensive property. 3 houses, all bought in the last 6 years. Nothing in his financials explains how he afforded them on a GS-12 salary." Cordero leaned forward. "Kickbacks, none, or blackmail. Look at this." Reaper turned the laptop around. "One of those properties is registered under an LLC with 3 partners. Hackett, a medical equipment supplier named CoreMed Solutions, and a pharmaceutical company called Helix Pharma. Both companies have VA contracts worth tens of millions." The picture was becoming clear. Deny veterans treatment, funnel them toward private contractors who charge the VA premium rates for minimal care, pocket the kickbacks. Shotgun's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, then his expression darkened. "My Phoenix PD contact pulled the missing persons file on Ethan's mother, Rachel Cole. It's been marked inactive, voluntary departure. But here's the thing. There's a note in the file from the original investigating officer saying he suspected foul play, but was ordered to drop it by his lieutenant. "Who's the lieutenant?" Hawk asked. "Gerald Hackett's brother-in-law." The room went silent. "They're connected through family," Bull said slowly. "Hackett's got law enforcement protection." Cordero stood and began pacing. "This is RICO territory. Conspiracy, fraud, potentially murder. But we need more before I can bring charges. We need someone on the inside to talk." Ghost had been studying his own phone. "I might have something. One of the veterans who filed complaints against Hackett didn't die. He went underground after receiving threats. Lives off-grid in the mountains near Prescott. Former Marine. Did 3 tours in Afghanistan. Name's Derek Moss." Hawk turned to him. "He'll talk to us. If we can find him, and if we can convince him he'll be protected. Then we find him. Bull, you and Ghost head to Prescott. Reaper, keep digging into Hackett's finances. Cordero, start building the legal framework for prosecution. I'm going to talk to Morrison about witness protection for everyone involved." As the crew dispersed, Ethan appeared again. The boy had a way of materializing when important conversations happened, as if he'd inherited his grandfather's tactical instincts. "Are you going to find my mom?" Hawk knelt down. "We're going to try, but Ethan, you need to understand something. This is bigger than we thought. There are bad people involved, people who've hurt a lot of families. We're going to stop them, but it's going to take time." "How much time?" "I don't know, but I promise you this. We won't stop until we find the truth." Ethan studied his face with those old eyes. "Grandpa said promises are iron." "Your grandpa was right." Sarah entered the room, her face drawn with worry. The caseworker called. "Ethan's father is demanding visitation rights. His lawyer is threatening to contest the custody arrangement." Hawk's expression went cold. "That won't happen. He has parental rights. The court will hear about his neglect, his addiction, and his connection to the people who covered up Jimmy's death. By the time Cordero's done, that man won't be allowed within a mile of Ethan." Sarah's eyes widened. "You think he's involved?" "I think he started using shortly after Rachel disappeared. I think someone made sure he stayed addicted and dependent. Easier to control that way. Easier to keep him from asking questions about where his wife went." The realization hit Sarah like a physical blow. She sat down heavily. "They destroyed my whole family. Not all of it." Hawk gestured to Ethan. "He's still here. He's still fighting. And now he's got an army behind him. If this story is touching your heart, hit that like button. It helps more people find these important stories." Chapter 6. The Mountain Man. Bull and Ghost found Derek Moss 3 days later, living in a cabin 20 miles outside Prescott, accessible only by a rough dirt road that required 4-wheel drive and determination. The cabin was positioned defensively, clear sight lines in all directions, single access point, elevated position. They approached on foot, hands visible, making no sudden movements. Moss watched them through a rifle scope for 10 minutes before stepping out onto his porch. He was 42, but looked 60. Gaunt, bearded, with eyes that had seen too much and trusted too little. His right leg ended at the knee, replaced by a prosthetic. Shrapnel scars covered his exposed arms. "State your business," he called out when they were 50 feet away. Bull stopped. "We're Marines. We're investigating Gerald Hackett at the Phoenix VA. We know he denied your treatment. We know you filed complaints. We know you went underground because of threats. You cops? No, we're brothers, and we've got Jimmy Cole's grandson with us. Hackett let Jimmy die." Something flickered in Moss's eyes. "Jimmy Cole? From 2nd Battalion? You knew him?" "We deployed together in '04. Good man. He made it home?" "He did. Then the VA killed him by denying treatment for 3 years. His daughter disappeared. His grandson nearly died from neglect. We're putting a stop to it." Moss studied them for a long moment, then lowered his rifle. "Come inside. But if this is a trap, You'll die before you reach the door. Inside, the cabin was spartanly furnished but meticulously organized. Maps, documents, and photographs covered one wall, an investigation board that would have impressed FBI profilers. "I've been building a case for 3 years," Moss explained. "Every veteran Hackett screwed over, every suspicious death, every connection between the VA, private contractors, and local law enforcement. But I can't prove any of it without documents I don't have access to." Ghost pulled out a tablet. "We have documents, medical records, financial transactions, testimony from families, and we've got Jake Cordero building a federal case." Moss's hands shook slightly as he scrolled through the files. "This is it. This is what I needed. But why now? Why is anyone finally listening?" "Because Jimmy Cole's grandson looked at a biker's tattoo and said the right words to the right man at the right time," Bull answered. "Hawk made a promise to Jimmy 20 years ago. He's keeping it now. Hawk, Marcus Sullivan, you know him. He pulled me out of a burning Humvee in Ramadi, carried me 200 yards under fire. I've been looking for a way to repay that debt for 20 years. Bull smiled grimly. "Today's your chance. We need you to testify. We need you to go on record about the threats, the cover-up, everything. But we can offer protection. Witness protection if necessary." Moss looked at his investigation board. 3 years of work, 3 years of hiding, 3 years of watching other veterans die while he stayed silent out of fear. "I'll do it, but I want something in return." "Name it." "I want to be there when you arrest Hackett. I want to look him in the eye when he realizes it's over." Ghost nodded. "Deal." They spent the next 6 hours documenting everything Moss had discovered. He'd identified 17 veterans who died after Hackett denied their claims. He'd traced kickback payments through shell companies. He'd even found evidence that Rachel Cole had been investigating Hackett before she disappeared. She'd been a medical billing specialist and had spotted irregularities in VA payments. "She was getting too close," Moss explained. "She'd connected Hackett to CorMed Solutions. She was about to expose the whole scheme. Then she vanished." "Where did she disappear from?" Bull asked. "A rehab facility in Scottsdale called Desert Hope Recovery Center. She checked herself in, was there for 30 days, then left voluntarily according to records. But her therapist told police she'd been making real progress and had no intention of leaving early." Ghost pulled up information on Desert Hope. "It's owned by Helix Pharma, same company that's partnered with Hackett." The pieces were falling into place. Rachel had discovered the fraud scheme. She'd been silenced. Her father had been allowed to die. Her son had been left with an addicted father who'd been deliberately kept dependent and dysfunctional, all to protect millions in illegal profits. Bull called Hawk with the update. On speakerphone, they could hear the cold fury in his voice. "Bring Moss to Flagstaff. Cordero needs to take his statement, and Ghost, start looking into Desert Hope's staff. If they helped disappear Rachel, someone there knows where she went." "Copy that." As they prepared to leave, Moss packed a single duffel bag. Everything he owned fit inside. 3 years of exile condensed to essential possessions. "You really think we can win this?" he asked as they loaded into Ghost's truck. Bull looked at him steadily. "We're Marines. We don't know how to lose. We're halfway through this story, and the truth is finally emerging. Stay with us." Chapter 7. Desert Hope Ghost went to Desert Hope Recovery Center alone, posing as someone seeking treatment information for a family member. The facility occupied a sprawling property in North Scottsdale. Palm trees, fountains, buildings designed to look like a resort rather than a rehab center. The intake coordinator was friendly, professional, and completely scripted. She explained programs, costs, success rates, but when Ghost mentioned he'd heard good things about their program from someone named Rachel Cole, her expression flickered for just a second. "I'm sorry, I don't recognize that name." Client confidentiality. She was here 3 years ago. Left suddenly. Her family's still looking for her. The coordinator's smile became fixed. I really can't discuss past clients, but if you'd like to schedule a tour... Already got what I needed. Ghost left before she could respond. He'd seen the recognition in her eyes, the fear. She knew something. He drove 2 blocks away and parked where he could watch the facility's staff entrance. Within 20 minutes, the coordinator emerged, got in her car and drove north. Ghost followed at a distance. She pulled into a business park and entered a building marked Helix Pharma Regional Office. She was inside for 40 minutes. When she emerged, she was accompanied by a man in his 50s wearing an expensive suit. Ghost snapped photos, then ran a facial recognition search using military-grade software that Reaper had, theoretically obtained through proper channels. Douglas Kramer, Gerald Hackett's supervisor at the VA. The coordinator was reporting directly to the people running the scheme. Ghost called Hawk. They're spooked. We need to move fast before they destroy evidence. Cordero's filing for emergency warrants tonight. Morrison's bringing federal marshals in. We hit all locations simultaneously tomorrow at dawn. What about Rachel? Hawk's voice was grim. If she's alive, we'll find her. If she's not, we make sure everyone responsible pays. That night, the crew gathered at Sarah's house for final preparations. Cordero had secured warrants for Hackett's properties, the VA office, Desert Hope, Helix Pharma and CoreMed Solutions. Federal marshals would execute simultaneously to prevent evidence destruction. Moss sat with Sarah, sharing stories about Jimmy Cole. The 2 veterans' families found comfort in each other's memories. Ethan stayed up late, refusing to go to bed. He sat beside Hawk, watching the adults plan. Will my mom be okay? Hawk couldn't lie to him. I don't know, kid, but we're going to find out. And then what? Then you and your grandma and your mom, if we find her, get to be a family again. A real family. Safe. What about you? Hawk looked surprised. What about me? Will you stay, or will you leave like everyone else? The question hit harder than it should have. Hawk realized that in keeping his promise to Jimmy, he'd formed a bond with this boy that went beyond duty. I'm not going anywhere until I know you're safe. That's a promise. Ethan nodded, satisfied. He leaned against Hawk's shoulder and fell asleep. Sarah watched from across the room, tears in her eyes. She mouthed 2 words, thank you. At 5:47 a.m., federal marshals hit all 6 locations. The raids were coordinated precisely. No time for communication between targets. No opportunity to destroy evidence. At Hackett's Sedona property, they found filing cabinets full of falsified medical reports, denial forms with forged signatures, and ledgers documenting kickback payments. Hackett himself was arrested in his underwear, screaming about violations of his rights. At the Phoenix VA office, Douglas Kramer tried to run when marshals entered. He made it to the parking lot before Bull tackled him. The satisfaction on Bull's face was evident. At Desert Hope Recovery Center, the intake coordinator immediately requested a lawyer, but the facility's director started talking within an hour, offering testimony in exchange for immunity. What she revealed changed everything. Rachel Cole hadn't disappeared. She'd been transferred to a sister facility in Nevada under a false name, kept heavily medicated, and held essentially prisoner for 3 years. The facility was used for problem patients, people who knew too much, asked too many questions, or threatened the scheme's profitability. By noon, federal agents had located the Nevada facility and were executing a rescue operation. Hawk got the call at 2:15 p.m. We found her, Rachel Cole, she's alive. Chapter 8. The Reunion. The hospital room in Las Vegas was quiet except for the steady beep of monitors. Rachel Cole lay in bed, thin and weak but conscious. She'd been found severely malnourished, with evidence of long-term sedation and psychological manipulation. Doctors said she'd need months of recovery. But she was alive. Sarah arrived first, nearly collapsing when she saw her daughter. The reunion was raw with emotion. 3 years of grief and hope and desperation pouring out in tears and desperate embraces. Hawk waited outside with Ethan. The boy was nervous, scared that his mother wouldn't remember him or wouldn't want him. "What if she's different?" Ethan asked. "She will be different. What happened to her changed her. But she's still your mom, and she fought to survive because of you." When they finally entered the room, Rachel turned her head. Her eyes, so like Jimmy's, found her son. For a moment, she didn't move. Then she started crying. "Ethan, my baby, you're so big." Ethan ran to her bedside. She pulled him close with trembling arms, holding him like she'd never let go. "I tried to find you," she whispered. "I tried to come home. They wouldn't let me. They said you were better off without me, that I was sick, that I'd hurt you." "You didn't hurt me, Mom. You never hurt me." Sarah stood on the other side of the bed, one hand on her daughter's shoulder, the other on her grandson's head. 3 generations reunited. Hawk backed toward the door, giving them privacy. But Rachel called out to him, "Wait, please." He stopped. "They told me you were looking for me, that Marines were investigating. I didn't believe them. I thought it was another trick to keep me compliant." She looked at his patches, his bearing. "You knew my father." "Yes, ma'am. He saved my life, made me promise to look after his family." Her eyes filled with tears again. "Thank you for keeping that promise. Thank you for finding my son. Thank you for not giving up." Hawk nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in his throat. Over the next week, the full scope of the conspiracy emerged. Gerald Hackett, Douglas Kramer, and 6 others were indicted on charges including fraud, conspiracy, kidnapping, and negligent homicide. The Phoenix VA office was placed under federal oversight. CoreMed Solutions and Helix Pharma faced criminal investigations and had their government contracts suspended. 17 veterans' families received official apologies and restitution payments. It wouldn't bring their loved ones back, but it acknowledged their sacrifice had been compounded by betrayal. Derek Moss came out of hiding and testified before a Senate committee about systemic failures in VA care. His testimony led to policy reforms and the creation of an independent oversight board. Rachel's case became a rallying point for mental health reform in treatment facilities. The Nevada facility where she'd been held was shut down, and 12 other patients were released from similar situations. Throughout all of this, Hawk and his crew stayed close. They became fixtures at Sarah's house, helping with repairs, providing security, and simply being present as the family healed. One evening, 2 months after the raids, Hawk sat on Sarah's porch watching Ethan play in the yard. The boy had gained weight, started smiling more, looked like a kid again instead of a soldier. Rachel joined him, moving slowly but steadily. She was in outpatient therapy, working through years of trauma and forced medication, but she was fighting back. "He asks about you every day," she said, "when you're coming back. How long you'll stay?" "I visit every week." "I know, but he wants more than visits. He wants—" She paused, choosing words carefully. "My father told him stories about the Marines, about brotherhood, about family you choose. Ethan thinks of you as family now." Hawk didn't know what to say to that. Rachel continued, "I'm not asking you to be his father. He had a grandfather who meant the world to him, and my ex-husband is. Well, he's not in the picture anymore. But Ethan needs good men in his life, men who show up, men who keep promises. I'll always be here for him, for all of you. That's not changing. Good, because we need you, not just for protection or because you made a promise to my father, but because you're family, whether you planned on it or not." She went back inside, leaving Hawk with those words. Family. He'd had a family once, before the war. Then he'd had his Marine brothers. Then he'd had his riding crew. But this, a grandmother, a mother, a boy who looked at him like he hung the moon. This was something different. This was the promise fulfilled, not just kept, but transformed into something permanent. Bull pulled up on his bike, followed by Ghost and Reaper. They'd been running final checks on Hackett's associates, making sure no loose ends remained. "All clear," Bull reported. "Everyone who was part of it is either arrested or under investigation. The VA's implementing new oversight procedures. Cordero says the case is airtight." "Good." Bull studied his friend's face. "You're staying, aren't you, in Flagstaff? Thinking about it. Jimmy would have liked that, you watching over his family. Jimmy would have said, 'I'm an idiot for taking this long to figure out what matters.'" Bull smiled. He'd be right about that too. Chapter 9. Iron and Honor. 6 months later. Hawk stood in a courtroom in Phoenix watching Gerald Hackett receive a 25-year sentence. Douglas Kramer got 18 years. The others received terms ranging from 5 to 15 years. The judge's final statement echoed through the room. "You betrayed the men and women who served this nation. You exploited their sacrifice for personal gain. You destroyed families and ended lives. No sentence can adequately reflect the magnitude of your crimes, but this court will ensure you spend the rest of your productive years behind bars, where you can contemplate the meaning of honor and duty, concepts you clearly never understood." 17 families sat in the gallery, including Sarah, Rachel, and Ethan. When the gavel fell, there were tears, not of joy, but of closure. Justice had been slow, but it had arrived. Outside the courthouse, Moss waited with the rest of Hawk's crew. He'd shaved, cleaned up, and looked 10 years younger. He'd found work as a veterans advocate, helping other disabled vets navigate the VA system. "Thank you," he said simply, "for believing me, for acting, for giving a damn when no one else would." Hawk shook his hand. "Marines don't leave Marines behind, not in war, not at home." As they walked to their bikes, a young reporter approached. "Mr. Sullivan, can I ask you a few questions about the case?" Hawk stopped. "Make it quick. What made you get involved? What drove you to take on the VA and these corporations?" Hawk thought about the answer, then looked past the reporter to where Ethan stood with his mother and grandmother. The boy waved, a promise made to a dying brother 20 years ago. A 7-year-old kid at a gas station who recognized a tattoo, and the understanding that some debts transcend time, circumstance, and convenience. "But it must have been dangerous. You risked. A promise is iron. It doesn't bend, doesn't break, doesn't rust. It's either kept or it's not. There's no middle ground." The reporter scribbled notes. "What happens now? Now those families get to heal. Now other veterans know someone's watching. Now the system has to change or face consequences." He turned to leave, then added, "And now I keep the second part of the promise, making sure Jimmy Cole's family stays safe and whole." "Is that a full-time commitment?" Hawk smiled slightly. "Marines don't retire from brotherhood." He walked away without further comment. That evening they gathered at Sarah's house for a cookout. It had become a weekly tradition. The crew, the family, and a growing circle of veterans and their families who'd been touched by the case. Ethan showed off his Little League uniform. He'd made the team and was playing shortstop. Rachel had found work at a veterans center, using her experience to help others. Sarah had started a support group for families of veterans who'd been failed by the system. As the sun set over Flagstaff, turning the mountains purple and gold, Hawk stood apart from the crowd, watching. Bull joined him. "You did good, brother." "We all did." "No, you kept a promise most men would have forgotten. You took a chance on a scared kid at a gas station. You built a case that brought down a criminal enterprise, and you gave a family back their future." Bull paused. "Jimmy would be proud. Jimmy deserved better than what happened to him." "Yeah, but his family got better because of you. That counts for something." Ethan ran over, grabbing Hawk's hand. "Come on, we're taking a group photo." Hawk let himself be pulled toward the porch where everyone was gathering. Moss, Ghost, Reaper, Shotgun, the other riders, Sarah, Rachel, Ethan, and a dozen others. Families built not by blood but by choice and commitment. The camera clicked. The moment froze. Warriors and families, promises kept, and futures reclaimed. Later, after most guests had left, Hawk and Ethan sat on the porch steps. The boy had been quiet for the last hour, processing something. "What's on your mind, kid?" Ethan looked up at the stars beginning to appear. "I was thinking about Grandpa, about how he saved you and then you saved us. That's how it works. We take care of each other." But what if you hadn't stopped at that gas station? What if I hadn't said anything about the tattoo?" Hawk considered the question. "Then I would have found you another way. Because a promise doesn't have an expiration date. It doesn't depend on convenient timing. I made that promise to your grandfather 20 years ago, and it was still active the day I met you. It'll be active 20 years from now, even when I'm grown up. Even then, because you're not just Jimmy Cole's grandson anymore. You're part of this." He gestured to the house, the bikes in the driveway, the lingering warmth of community. "Your family, and family is forever." Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then, "When I grow up, I want to be like you, and Grandpa. I want to keep promises." Hawk felt something settle in his chest, the weight of responsibility accepted, the pride of seeing legacy passed forward. "Then I'll teach you, not just about motorcycles and brotherhood, but about honor, about showing up when things are hard, about being the man others can count on when the world falls apart." "Will you teach me to ride?" Hawk laughed. "When you're old enough. But first, you finish school, help your mom and grandma, and learn what it means to be reliable in small things before you tackle the big ones." That's what Grandpa would have said. Your grandpa was a smart man. They sat in comfortable silence, watching fireflies begin their nightly dance. Inside, Rachel and Sarah cleaned up while sharing quiet conversation. Bull and the others prepared to ride out, engines rumbling to life one by one. Ghost approached the porch. "We're heading back to Phoenix. You coming?" Hawk shook his head. "I'll ride out in the morning. Got something I need to do first." Ghost smiled knowingly and nodded. "See you next week, kid," he said to Ethan. "See you, Ghost." As the bikes pulled away, their taillights disappearing into the desert night, Hawk stood and stretched. "Bedtime for you, soldier. 5 more minutes? Now you've got school tomorrow." Ethan groaned, but obeyed, heading inside. At the door, he turned back. "Hey, Hawk, thanks for everything." "Any time, kid." After Ethan went to bed, Hawk helped Rachel and Sarah finish cleaning. They moved with practiced coordination, a routine established over months of shared dinners and quiet healing. "You're staying tonight?" Sarah asked. "If that's okay. Want to head out early tomorrow, get ahead of the heat." "Your room's ready. It's always ready." The phrase carried weight. Your room, not the guest room, not the spare bedroom. Your room. Later, lying in bed in the small room that had indeed become his when visiting Flagstaff, Hawk stared at the ceiling and thought about the path that had led here. A tattoo. 5 words from a child. A promise made in blood and sand 2 decades ago. He thought about the 17 families who'd lost loved ones to Hackett's greed, about Derek Moss living alone in the mountains for 3 years, about Rachel, stolen from her son and held captive, about Ethan dirty and scared at a gas station with old eyes that had seen too much. The system that should have protected them had failed. But brotherhood hadn't failed. The promise hadn't failed. His phone buzzed. A text from Bull. "Morrison says the Senate committee is drafting legislation, the Jimmy Cole Memorial VA Reform Act. They want you to testify." Hawk typed back, "I'll do it, whatever it takes to make sure this doesn't happen again." Another message came through, this one from Cordero. Final conviction today. Last member of the conspiracy pleaded guilty. It's done. We won. Hawks stared at those two words. We won. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like justice. Slow, painful, necessary justice. The victory would come later, in the years ahead, when Ethan graduated high school, when Rachel fully healed, when other veterans received proper care because the system had been forced to change. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in." Rachel entered, wrapped in a robe, looking tired but peaceful. "Can't sleep." "Just thinking." She sat on the edge of the bed. "About Dad?" "About everything. About how one moment can change the trajectory of lives. If I'd driven past that gas station, if Ethan hadn't noticed the tattoo, if I'd decided his situation wasn't my problem. But you didn't drive past. And it was your problem, because my father made it your problem 20 years ago, and thank God he did." She paused. "I've been in therapy, working through everything, and my therapist asked me what I was grateful for. I told her I was grateful my father chose his brothers wisely, that he trusted the right man with the right promise. I should have found you sooner, should have checked on Jimmy's family years ago. You found us exactly when we needed you most. Any earlier, and maybe the corruption wouldn't have been exposed. Any later, and Ethan might not have survived. The timing was," she searched for the word, "providential." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. "Ethan wants you to adopt him," Rachel said quietly. Hawk's head snapped toward her. "What?" "Not legally, not officially, but in his heart you're already his. He talks about you like you're his father, draws pictures of you, tells his friends about his Marine who saved him." She smiled sadly. "His actual father signed away parental rights last month in exchange for reduced jail time. Ethan doesn't even ask about him anymore, but he asks about you every single day." "Rachel, I don't know how to be a father." "Neither did my dad when I was born, but he figured it out. And you've already been doing it for 6 months. You just haven't admitted it to yourself yet." She stood to leave, then turned back. "You kept your promise to my father. You saved his grandson. You gave us our lives back. But somewhere along the way, it stopped being about duty and started being about love. That's okay, Hawk. That's more than okay. That's what family is." She left, closing the door softly behind her. Hawk lay back down, staring at the ceiling again. The weight on his chest had shifted. No longer the burden of an unfulfilled promise, but the weight of accepted responsibility, of chosen family, of love earned through action and presence. His phone buzzed one more time, a text from Ethan sent from Rachel's phone. "Good night, Hawk. Love you." 3 words that changed everything. Hawk typed back, "Good night, kid. Love you too." He set the phone down and closed his eyes. Tomorrow, he'd ride back to Phoenix. Next week, he'd return to Flagstaff. The week after, he'd testify before the Senate. And through it all, he'd be exactly what Jimmy Cole had asked him to be 20 years ago. A man who showed up, who kept his word, who protected those who couldn't protect themselves. The promise had been iron, but what it had forged was family. And that, he realized, was the real victory. Outside, the desert night settled over Flagstaff. In the house, 3 generations slept peacefully, protected by the knowledge that someone was watching over them, someone who would never leave, someone who had proven that promises made in blood and brotherhood could survive 2 decades, cross deserts and mountains, and transform strangers into family. The iron promise had been kept, and in keeping it, Marcus Hawk Sullivan had found something he hadn't known he'd lost, a reason to come home. Thank you for riding with us through this incredible journey of honor, brotherhood, and redemption. If this story moved you, please subscribe to our channel, hit that notification bell, and share this with someone who needs to hear about the power of keeping promises. We've got more stories of courage and loyalty coming your way. Until next time, remember, some promises are iron, and real family is the one you choose to protect. Ride safe out there.